I would say that the group that I guess is before you comes together not as South Carolinians but as Americans. And I mean that in this sense. When you think about the notion of energy independence, it's ultimately not just a South Carolina issue but an American issue. If you think about this notion of CO2 emissions and this idea of clean air, it's an American issue, not a South Carolina issue. I mean, if you think about this notion that $10 billion has been invested in Yucca Mountain over a long number of years, that's ultimately an American taxpayer issue, not a South Carolina issue. And yet the Obama administration has proposed a detour from basically a 25-year compact based on simple old-style Chicago politics that are the antithesis of the change that he himself had promised just a couple of months ago in the campaign of literally not that much more than a year ago. And so if you go down that path, we will indeed set back America's quest toward energy independence. We will set back America's path toward cleaner air and less in the way of CO2 emissions, and we will set back the taxpayers to the tune of more than $10 billion. And so I guess if I was to sum it up, this issue is too big to be driven by partisan politics in Washington, D.C. I mean, I think we all get it that Harry Reid is in a tough race out in Nevada, and giving him this would give him a win in a tough race in Nevada, but it would come at great expense to the rest of us as Americans. And so I would say that the president cannot stand, as he stood at the State of the Union just a couple of weeks ago, and talk about more in the way of nuclear energy, even promising $36 billion in loan guarantees toward that end, but undo a bipartisan compact that's been in place for more than 25 years, because we have to have a permanent storage solution if you want to have more in the way of nuclear energy. I would say you can't stand for bipartisan solutions and undo a 25-year solution that's been in place during Republican and Democratic presidential administrations alike. I mean, this thing came in at the tail end of the Carter era, went through the Reagan era, went through the Bush era, went through the Clinton era, went back through the Bush era, and now would be undone by a president based on the fact that the guy's in trouble, or hypothetically might be in some level of electoral trouble out in Nevada. That just does not make common sense. I would say also you can't stand for the taxpayer and wash down more than $10 billion that's been invested in Yucca Mountain from taxpayers across this country, well beyond South Carolina. I mean, South Carolina has invested $1.2 billion into this fund. South Carolina taxpayers, $1.2 billion. But if you look, we're not the biggest on the list. If you look, Illinois has invested 1.8, Pennsylvania has invested $1.6 billion, North Carolina has invested $830 million, Alabama has invested $750 million, Florida has invested $770 million. I mean, you can go down the list, but it is, I think, something that underscores the great degree of national investment that has gone into the Yucca Mountain bipartisan solution reached and forged over 25 years. And so we're here, and we're going to, everybody will speak their turn, and we'll try and get out of here by lunch. But in fairly quick succession, if it'd be all right with you, would come Joe Wilson, then Congressman Barrett, then, not that Joe Wilson's not a congressman, Lieutenant Governor Andre Bauer, Senator Greg Ryberg, Representative Nikki Haley, County Councilman Scott, there's Scott. Or I don't know how you all want to do, I'll let you all figure out the local thing, and then we'll have a couple folks speak from Aiken County if that'd be all right with y'all. And everybody say their piece, and we'll move on and go from there. Let me be very specific. Our window is fairly short on this thing. I mean, based on what the DOE has done, you basically have to the end of February to do something. And so the first request, I know that at least from this administration's end, would be that the Obama administration indeed reverse itself. Now, if that doesn't happen, then I think you have to look at legal action, and we would implore and ask the Attorney General to file an injunction, because again, we have a short window to the end of February. If that doesn't happen, I suspect Aiken will take it into its own hands and probably do something along those lines, since they'd have standing there in Aiken County. I mean, there are a number of different remedies that one can look at, but I think that the important thing for all of us to recognize and remember as taxpayers is that something needs to take place by the end of this month,